Hello, my friends. My name is Ryan, and you're watching a video on this most marvelous of psychological concepts. This is a concept that goes back to one of the earliest Greek philosophers, Heraclitus, who most famously said, "Everything flows. No man steps into the same river twice." This is Heraclitus. Later, Plato would take up this concept. The concept is Enantiodromia, and it became more popular in the 20th century when the great Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung used it to understand and analyze many of the psychological phenomena that he was seeing both in patients and through other cases that he saw through history, as well as social movements. So what is enantiodromia? All right, well, I guess it means, if you just look up the actual definition, it means running into the opposite, or the counterplay of opposites, running into the opposite. And the idea, I'll just read the definition from the very thick tome by Carl Jung called Psychological Types. It has all of the definitions of all the various terms that he uses. And enantiodromia means a running counter to. In the philosophy of Heraclitus, it is used to designate the play of opposites in the course of events. The view that everything that exists turns into its opposite. From the living comes death, and from the dead, life. From the young, old age, and from old, youth. From waking, sleep, and from sleep, waking. The stream of generation and decay never stands still. Construction and destruction, destruction and construction. This is the principle which governs all the cycles of natural life, from the smallest to the greatest. Just as the cosmos itself arose from the primal fire, so it must return once more into the same, a dual process running its measured course through vast periods of time, a drama eternally reenacted. Such is the enantiodromia of Heraclitus, in the words of qualified interpreters. Okay, so that is Jung quoting Heraclitus. Like I said, this term has been around for a very long time from Heraclitus, but I believe it was primarily dormant for a long time in our public awareness until Carl Jung revived it in many of his very great landmark works. And so Jung has a lot to say. He uses it to talk about how the unconscious develops its energy from the conscious repressions and so forth. I'm not going to talk about it in that respect. There's a lot you can say with it, because it is this, if you those words that Jung quoted Heraclitus, this principle which governs all cycles of life, right? It's hot, but eventually it's going to get cold, right? Birth, death, death, birth, old, young, young, old. Yin Yang, right? Yin Yang. The Chinese have this idea. If you have ever looked at the I Ching, the I Ching is one of the oldest books in the history of the world, certainly one of the oldest in China, and it is basically 64 hexagrams, where the hexagrams, which are these lines that are designated either yin or yang. Colloquially in the West, we call it yang, yin and yang, but in Chinese, it's pronounced yang. So yin and yang, and these lines are constantly changing. So as you go through the I Ching, through all the various hexagrams, the yang is breaking into the yin is transforming into the yang. Rebirth, life, death, right? You're going to die, but your energy is going to get transfused and probably give birth to new life. Everything is constantly flowing. There is nothing permanent. And so the opposites are running into each other. That's the idea of enantiodromia. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I have experienced it most profoundly within my psychological state. And that's one of the reasons Jung was using it, because he said in 2 essays on analytical psychology, another great book, old Heraclitus, who was indeed a very great sage, discovered the most marvelous of all psychological laws. So not just a law for the cycles of nature, which psychology is part of nature, the regulative function of opposites. I'm not going to be using it in necessarily the same way that Jung used it, but for me, I literally will go in certain times of the day, sometimes in the morning, where I'm just so dominated by my conscious, rational brain of, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, what's going to happen here, where, right, typical modern human thinking. And I'm stressed out, and then I can't just command myself to not stress out, but eventually I poof, fuck it, and I relax. My senses open up. I'm no longer in this tunnel vision of thinking. I become more of a human. I'm using my intuition, my feelings, and empathy. Something snaps. It's like, so life to death, right? Conscious thinking, conscious awareness to boom, natural instinct, flowing emotions. So I have these shifts, we might call it mood swing. Well, sometimes I literally will go from very depressed, like really sad, woe is me, the universe is against me, and I just go through this, and I'm just going through it, and I might even cry. And then all of a sudden, boom, I go right to the opposite, and suddenly I realize how amazing life is, how lucky I am, and how blissful reality can be. So Jung has a lot to say about that, on how you can avoid it sneaking up on you by consciously being aware that the opposite is there. I won't go into the details. I just wanted to talk about that for someone out there who is going through a very hard time. In my own experience, the best thing for me is to go with that hard experience, having faith in the Enantiodromia, and knowing that hard experience is going to transform, and suddenly I will feel happy again. I will feel blissful again. Nature doesn't like to just stay in one place. Even the mountains that we look outside our window, they're crumbling, they're changing, or they're raising up. Everything is constantly changing. Heraclitus was a profound philosopher. I still haven't gotten a hold of any of his writings, but a lot of my heroes, intellectual heroes, quote him, and so I'm always looking for him at the bookstore. Eventually, I'll get my hands on him, because his ancient Greek philosophy so mirrors that Taoist Chinese idea of everything is changing as well. So if you're going through a hard time in life, just keep going with it. Don't repress it. Don't fight it. This is my own advice. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a professional psychologist, but let it go and then watch it transform into its opposite. I have seen that time and time again in my own life, even with really big things that I thought were insurmountable. Like jail. When my jail in Japan watched that series Up Above, please watch it and subscribe. It was the worst thing in my life. It was the worst thing in the world. But finally, when I just let go, I realized I could not control the experience. It started to become this beautiful experience. And I had a deeper connection with Japanese people than I had when I wasn't in jail. And ended up now thinking very fondly of those memories. So something that can be very terrible can turn into something very great. This too shall pass is another quote that's kind of off the top of my head, seems to come along those lines, because everything is changing. Enantiodromia, running into opposites. Remember that the next time you're going through a hard time, and it will pass, and it will run into its opposite, bliss and happiness. So saith the great mystic Heraclitus. Thank you for watching. My name is Ryan. Bye-bye.